were going to notice that I'm going to add some recordings, some videos right on EduCal, so it's going to be kind of from class explaining it, because I think people can, sometimes the people teaching it may say things similar to me, but I might give some other information. So we are trying to write this with integer coefficients. This one is pretty nice because they're all already integers. What it means is I need all the numbers by themselves, right, to get in standard form. So if I'm looking at this assignment from C4, I need to get the x and the y, and I want my x to be positive. So I look at this and I have this negative 2x. I'm going to add 2x to both sides. Now on this side, there wasn't a 2x before, so I now have 2x plus y minus 4 equals 6. I'm almost done with 33. The nice thing about 33 is I just now need to add 4 to both sides. And I have 2x plus y equals 10. And that is considered to be in standard form because I always want my x first, then my y equaling the number. Now, when I take a look at number 35, I got some fractions, and I think the ones you're going to see on the test are going to be more like 34 and 35, okay, on the quiz on Wednesday, Thursday. So when you look at 34, 35, we have this fraction in here. Now, we don't have the x positive also. So when I look at number 35, and I'm putting that on my paper, I am going to first, I could add the x to both sides. So I could add 2/3 x. So I have 2/3 x plus 1y equals -1. Almost standard form, except we have a denominator, we have a fraction. And in standard form, we can't have fractions. So to get rid of 2/3, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply everything, distributing it by 3/2. Nah, not by 3/2, just by 2, 1/2. No. Multiplying it by the denominator, 3. So here is 35. So I have 3, and I'm distributing that. So here, I get 6/3. Well, 6/3 is just 2x. 3 times 1y, 3y. 3 times -3, -3. No fractions. I don't want to multiply by the reciprocal because then I would have had, here I would have canceled, but then I'd have fraction in these two spots, right? Questions? The number of joules that you must get to earn 250 points. What are combinations? So, I don't know if on this quiz I asked the story problem quite like this. I think I just asked you to write it. On the test, you're going to see one like this where I ask you to give me the combination. So, in this case, I might say that x is going to equal my joules. And I might say that y is going to be the stars. And so 5x, standard form, plus 2 for a star, 2y, equals 250. Now when I look at this equation, when you're in standard form, I mean, could we rewrite this in slope-intercept form? Yes, but the easiest way to graph is to find your y-intercept and your x-intercept. Because you really only need 2 points in order to graph this. This is going to be all in the first quadrant. Our x we said is here, that was our joules. Our y is our stars. So, if I'm finding the x-intercept is when the y value is 0. So if you can't remember that formula, is it c divided by a or c divided by b for standard form? Don't worry about it. Just think, x-intercept is when y is 0. Y-intercept is when the x is 0. So go to the equation and replace this time the y with 0. If y, because this is our y, this is x, if y is 0, you would have 5x plus nothing equals 250. Divide both sides by 5. 250 divided by 5 is going to give us 50. So we could go up to 50 joules. We know we're going to have a point here at 50, 0 for my graph. Could I have rewritten it in slope-intercept form? Yes. getting the slope of -2/5 or -5/2, but like who wants to graph 250 down 5, that's a big graph, right? So this is already over to 50. So now when we look at this other point, we replace the x with 0. Oh, if x is 0, that means instead of having 5x, I'm going to have 5 times 0 is just 0, plus 2y equals 250. That means half of 250, right? To find y, half of 250 is 125. Oh, that means when I graph this, this is at a point 0, 125. And if we are looking at this, write a graph equation that represents the number of joules and stars. We have 3 combinations. Now, I'm going to make a solid line, but it's really not a solid line, right? Because you can't get half a joule or half of a star, right? This is discrete, if we are talking about discrete continuous. Why? Because when you're playing the video game, they don't give you a half a star, they give you a star or a joule, right? So it's discrete. And now if I was listing 3 possibilities, the easiest way to find my possibilities, like say I put in 10. 1, I already have 0, 1, 25, 50, 0. Those are 2 points already, right? They ask you to give another combination. Pick a value for x and solve for y in this equation. Pick a value for y and solve for x. That'll give you your other combination. So we're looking at all of these points that are on this line, okay? And in your current notes, it is on page 22, no, okay, 23. Okay, so page 23 for what is on our quiz that you're taking either Wednesday or Thursday. Okay. So the first thing that you are going to see is the 13 questions is 54 points. So it's like half of the test, right? When do we take it? We take it Wednesday and Thursday. You guys are taking it Wednesday. As you look at this, the first 7 questions are 30 points. So, first 7 questions, 30 points. I can write a 2-variable linear equation. So I'm going to give you a point and a slope. If I give you a point and a slope, you should write it in point slope form, right? You have to have that memorized. I'm going to give you 2 points, and I'm going to say, write it in simplified form. Well, you might start with point slope and move it to slope intercept. I'm going to give you a slope and a point and say, write it in slope intercept. So sometimes I'm going to tell you what form. If I don't say, I'm going to give you a graph. So sometimes I'm going to give you, if we are looking at this, a point and the slope. It could be 2 points listed like 2xy. When you look at those and I'm asking you to write an equation, your first step is find the slope. Now, if the slope isn't, if the 2 points are actually ordered pairs, you want to use the formula, right? If I give you 2 points and it's on a graph, then you could count for your slope. Okay? A lot of times I'm going to ask you to simplify. So make sure you know the 3 forms, right? That's what the quiz is on. It's called Linear Equations Quiz 3 Forms. And then we do what's in today's lesson, inequalities. So the easiest is your point slope. The simplified, so point slope is that y equals mx minus x1 plus y1. Usually when we tell you the simplified form, okay, so point slope, if we say simplified, usually what we mean for simplified form of a graph is slope intercept. So if it says simplify it, write it in slope-intercept. Y equals the mx plus b. I might ask you to identify what's the slope, what's the y-intercept, right? When I give you that equation. And then the last one is that standard form that we were working on. And anytime you're doing standard form, it has to be the ax plus by equals c. A has to be greater than 0, right? Positive. And no fraction or decimal. The only time I would see a fraction or a decimal is in a story problem. Like when I'm dealing with money, right? So I might say, oh, this costs $2.50 for buying salted peanuts, and if you're buying cashews by the pound, you're going to pay $7.99. So if I have $50 to spend on mixed nuts and cashews, how many of each could I get? Well, you go with 2.5 times the one note now plus $7.99, like C, equals. That would be okay to have fractions and decimals in the story problem. But like the one that someone asked on the two that we were looking at with rewrite it in standard form that we looked at, those you want to make sure. I can graph two variable equations and inequalities. So this is where the other, if we are thinking about this, the other 24 points come from. As you see, as you're going to do the problems tonight in the workbook and as you're looking at them, I give you, so like the third page of the quiz, I just give you equations and graphs. I give you an equation. I give you an equation and ask you to graph it. So I'm just going to be giving you different things and say, graph this, graph this. Can you use the point for your start point? Yes. Could you rewrite it in slope-intercept form? Yes. Could you use x and y intercepts? Yes. You are just going to be asked to graph those equations as we look at those. Well, I'm also going to ask you, give me an equation for a horizontal line. You need to make sure you understand that horizontal is always the y. So you could say y equals 2, y equals 0, y equals 7, right? That's going to be the horizontal line. Give me an equation for one that is vertical, x equals. So I know that this one is going to be vertical, this one is going to be horizontal, that they go through in your notes. A story problem, this is kind of like what I was talking about where you could have dollars in that standard form of an equation, because in this one you're writing a linear inequality with finding the nuts in this case. Then they're going to ask you, is it true? And then you're asked to come up with a graph. So I would like to look at 7. That's kind of what your quiz, and page 58. So 55 to 58, that's like the review for the quiz. So after you finish the inequalities today, tomorrow when you guys are home, we're going to be going through this. I'll try and put the video up of what we answer questions on in class or looking at things. And I'll try and attach those notes tomorrow with it also, so as you're looking at it. So please, questions. We can look at this. We can look at 3. What do you guys want to do? As we are looking at